Welcome to the first devlog of my 2D RPG game. I felt that this was pretty long overdue. I've been working on the game for about 8 months now, I think at this point. I started in October of 2022, but I just wanted to share my overview of the game and the progress that I've been making so far. I do stream a lot of my game development more so over on Twitch, if you're interested in seeing a little bit more of the behind the scenes of what's been going on with the game. So just a little bit about my background. My game dev journey began 4 years ago during my time in grad school. I went to grad school for something completely separate from video games or programming or anything like that. I just found that it really wasn't what I wanted to do, and my life just wasn't what I envisioned, so video games kind of provided a much needed escape for me at that time. This inspired me to pivot towards coding. I was successful at pivoting my career to more so web development than game development. Now, after 4 years of programming and 2 in web development, I felt ready to get back to my original inspiration, which was creating a game. So over the years, I've dabbled in several smaller game prototypes. Each one kind of fell short of my expectations. A lot of them felt very flat and generic, just kind of copies of games that already existed. Each abandoned project eventually kind of sparked a unique thought. What if these unfinished projects didn't simply just vanish? What if they carried on and continued growing while I wasn't there? So in this game I've been working on, you are the developer who revisits an old project that's been abandoned, only the game hasn't stopped changing since you left it. The game has begun to evolve. The NPCs have slowly started to abandon their intended roles, new bugs have emerged, and the morality of this world is becoming questionable. As the creator of this world, it's up to you to determine the direction of the game. The first few months were mostly about learning Unity. I created a simple character and devised basic dialogues with one of the NPCs. I also had a very basic just enemy combats. Around December, I started leaning more into the game's art direction. I decided to change the color palette from this very bright, vibrant, almost neon colors to a much darker theme because I felt like it would match the tone of the game a lot better. I decided on using Unity for the engine, mostly just because I only have experience with Unity and Unreal kind of seemed like overkill for just a 2D project. Unity is pretty easy to, get set up with and everything. I'm still pretty new to the engine, but I just decided that, rather than learning any of the other new engines, I would go with something that I was already familiar with. I settled on using Sprite for the pixel art. I've done art before in the past, but I've never done pixel art before, so this was my first time kind of practicing that. To start, I first incorporated basic just RPG staples that I knew I would want in the game regardless of how the gameplay kind of evolved. So things like inventory, toolbar, crafting, farming, all of those are functional, at least in a very early kind of prototype stage. Then as I started to get the basics of the game down, I started to think more about how I wanted to make my game different and unique, and what I wanted the player's experience to be in the game. I started experimenting with a few things that I thought I would put into the game, like this card system that would allow you to change the NPC's code, but after testing some stuff, I found that this mechanic just wasn't very fun. I realized the core of my game's concept really revolves around the NPCs and their interactions with the players. After all, it's the NPCs that have been building upon the game while you were gone. I needed more complex NPCs. At the time, I had a very basic scheduling system for the NPCs built in, but it wasn't going to provide what I wanted. So the first step to more realistic AI was creating a custom pathfinding solution using A*. That way the NPCs can just figure out where they're going. And then most recently, I've been working on implementing a GOAP system, so goal-oriented action programming. I'll probably make an entirely separate video about this in the future because it's very complicated. I'll link an article down below that just gives a little bit of background, at least for what it is and what it does. Basically, the GOAP system will allow the AIs to make their own decisions on the sequence of actions they can take to get to a certain goal, given the agent's current state as well as the world state. This will allow for much more dynamic and unpredictable AIs, which is kind of what I'm going for. Something that feels more real to the player. But this is a reasonably complex system, so like I said, I'm gonna make a separate video on this in the future to talk way more in detail about it. Getting back to just the core gameplay, it's going to draw heavily from traditional RPG elements. A significant part of your role as a player revolves around assisting the NPCs through quests, helping them navigate sections of the game that have succumbed to corruption and decay. So I plan to have a pretty extensive questing system, as well as this mechanic where you can restore sprites and buildings that have been tarnished and decaying over time as a result of the game being slightly broken. Essentially, most of the gameplay is going to be helping the NPCs unbreak the game. Instead of having a traditional day-night cycle, after 20 minutes in the game, or around 20 minutes, I might change it depending on gameplay experience, the game world will start to deteriorate and become more and more corrupt. Essentially, all of the other NPCs on the map have to get to a safe location while this is happening so they don't become corrupted themselves. When the corruption event ends and or the player gets to a safe location, the game will cycle back to the start of that day, still preserving your items in progress and interactions with NPCs, but essentially resetting all of the resources and spawns on the map. If you or other NPCs fail to find a secure location before the game resets, it could lead to serious repercussions, corruption, and bugs in the code the next day. As for the story of the game, still a little early in the progress of that, but the story for the game relies heavily on the player's return to the game world. So you're aided by this guy, this like cat guy. I don't really have a name for him yet. Essentially, he's going to be the entity that acts as the bridge between the game world and reality, guiding the player through the world in a way that the NPCs in the game can't. So upon returning to the game for the first time, many of the NPCs are hesitant to see you back because they've deviated so far from their intended roles in the game that they're wary about you essentially returning them back to their former existence, rather than the one that they themselves chose. However, others in the game have been awaiting your return and have woven your absence even into their narrative of the game, creating almost a cult-like following around your eventual return back to the game. And now that it's finally there, you have fulfilled their narrative, causing a little bit of chaos. So I think this division is going to set up a lot of complex dynamic for many of the quests and goals and stuff. It offers players, a compelling narrative, freedom of choice, and lots of different possibilities. My game isn't just about the mechanics themselves, but also about the stories that we, the players, can tell and the experiences we can craft. Okay, so that's it for the first devlog. Thanks for watching. I'll have more devlogs in the future that go into a little bit more specifics of the game. I've just been procrastinating making this for a while. Like I said, I also stream on Twitch a lot of the progress of the game, so stop by there if you want to see any of the behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, thanks for watching. There's still a long way to go, but stay tuned as I continue to share the progress.